Okay, hey everybody, this is Grace. This video I want to talk about, I have been through the past 14 or 15 months some very intense, is the word that kept coming to my mind, intense, dealings with people who really make me think about that they are the epitome of the dark triad, maybe even the dark tetrad. Okay, the whole thing with the narcissism, very thick, it's all about them, no matter what, even though what they're doing legally, it's not supposed to be about them at all. Okay, and the next is the Machiavellianism. The way I see that more is people are very calculating. They are, you mix it with this other one, psychopathy, and the narcissism all together, that they are so calculating and so like sitting there listening to you like as if they're really interested, but really just waiting for anything that they can use to, some of it could be to scam you, some of it to be to however they're going to use you, to say, or that they need some kind of a validation for it, for legal purposes. They're looking for that. They're not listening to the rest, and they don't have any remorse, guilt, shame for what they're doing. They show that they don't have any empathy. They apparently can't feel empathy. I'm combining all these together, these different things. You can see it, and there's no compassion. It's just what can they get out of what you are saying that they can use for their own selfish purposes. Often it involves money. Okay, and I have been through this, and it's mainly been men. Two of them are my age, and one of them is a woman. She's around my age. But there are other people involved, and you can tell, like the woman, I could tell in a way that she's not happy with it, but she doesn't want to lose her job, and she really needs her job, and so she's been taught to be cold, cold, calculating, no empathy, but just do it or else. And but it's been very intense with this, and it's about time I finally sum it up in my own mind this way. And I have been exhausted by it, and it was needed, supposedly. But to me, they were scammers. They were supposed to be professionals. They have professional licenses, and but no, it's more just scamming people for money, using people for money. And but they do have their licenses. Okay, now. The two that were my age, both men. One of them, somebody had told me something, and I've made videos about what all this is, but I'm going to stick to this part of it. Somebody in a corporate office told me, reminded me really, because I already knew these things at some point, but I had not even thought about them in probably 20 years maybe. If that, maybe around that time. And somebody reminded me of him in the corporate office. And I was asked by someone else in their corporate office if I would just mention it to these people that I say remind me of the dark triad, make me think of. How else do I put it? Seriously. It's not really like a diagnose, it's just the behaviors are there, and their actions and all that, and the words that come out of their mouth and what other people have actually said about them, all that, and then some. It's so intense. And anyway, I was said to mention, and I mentioned he was one of them. I mentioned that's not in their kind of group. I mentioned. And he basically, okay, no problem, like that. And no big deal. He's my age too. He's not in that group. Like, he's not he's a regular guy. He's a nice guy. I really like him. And he is actually a professional. And then these two that are my age that are not. They're supposed to be, but they're not. I see them more as scammers. And one of them, the first one, you know, some people, they're not used to doing things like, this would be more like Zoom. Okay, I don't think I've ever used Zoom myself, but I get it. I mean, I've been on videos using different programs and all that. I had my first computer in 1982, so I'm not naive to it. But this guy, he seemed like he wasn't used to it. And he's my age group. And we had an appointment to speak to one another, just one another, on, you know, something like Zoom. Okay. And I called in, you know, so there I was, and he was supposed to be there. Both of us needed to be there. You know, nobody else. And it was, from what I understand, they're videoed, not by me. They're, you know, captive, whatever. But he, when I saw him, his camera, he was looking at his computer, and it made me think of Alfred Hitchcock. Remember, is it at the beginning or the end of Alfred Hitchcock shows? You know, where his face is, you see it from the side, and that's who he made me think of. Seriously, everything. And I'm like, why is he doing that? At first I thought maybe it was a picture on his wall. I'm serious. I had seen him before, but just once. And I'm looking at him like he's just sitting there and he's not saying anything. And I could see him on mine. And I kept saying hello. You know, that's first I said hello. He didn't respond, and I kept talking. I said, "Are you there? Can you hear me?" I pushed the buttons, you know, on mine, click, 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 make sure everything's working just fine. Mine is working just fine, but I could not drop it, you know, because I had to be there. And he could easily say, well, she never showed up, which would have been a lie, which, you know, scammers aren't always telling the truth. In fact, usually they're not. I mean, they're scammers. Okay. And so I just stayed in, and it was probably like 10, 15 minutes. I got, you know, busy doing something at my desk, and I kept looking, and it was kind of like, it was humiliating for him. I felt the humiliation he would feel, knowing that I can see him, everything he's doing, sitting there at the desk thinking, you know, scratching his head, putting his arm up and stuff like that. It just was really weird, and he's not saying anything to me. Just uncomfortable, you know, awkward. And but I kept doing whatever I was doing on my computer and all. And all of a sudden he just starts talking. Like 10, 15 minutes, give or take, within it, he just starts talking. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. All around it was weird. And anyway, I told him what I was, you know, somebody said I needed to mention it to him. And I told him that. And he said, this is an admission of guilt. I don't think that he even realizes that's what it is. Because when I told him that, you know, about doing things wrong and this and that, and I was really livid because it's not my job. And I was not happy with it, but I was nice to him, just as I was to the other one, and told him. And he said, well, I'll just turn it around on you. That's an admission of guilt. So he was admitting that he was doing those things wrong and knew it. He didn't have to sit there and think about it, like, you know, contemplate, what did I, or anything. He knew it. Okay, that's the first of these two that are my age. The next one, we had a long conversation in person. And I didn't tell him because he wasn't part of that group at the time, you know, when I was told to you know, to just mention it to him, okay? But it came up in the conversation, not about the other ones, but just came up. And he was doing the same kind of thing, you know, the whole thing of just, it was all about him. He was paying attention, trying to find words and terms, words that I had used or things I had experiences I had to take those and use against me, or to use me basically for money. Really, what it is a scammer, and it's not the kind of like like I said, I've made videos on what this is, but I wanted to do it to where this part is clear. Okay, and then he admitted what he's doing. He admitted to it without, I don't think he realized. I'm a social and behavioral scientist, and when I say this, that's why I say I'm a social and behavioral scientist, because I'm trained over 20 years for what I'm seeing, and I'm able to see this is what he's saying and probably doesn't realize it. Okay, in this instance, that's why I'm pointing this out, is that he was again admitting to guilt of doing what he shouldn't be doing. Okay, and like Adam, I told him he seemed to have no remorse, guilt, shame. He was just like a true psychopath, and he was very calculating. All about him when it's not supposed to be. On and on. And Adam says, well, these two have been doing this for so long, they probably don't even care. He's saying the same thing I already know. That they don't even care that they're lying and doing that. They're so out of touch with with all of it, because they've been doing it for so long. They don't even think anymore. I start adding stuff to it. They don't even think anymore that they could legally be in a lot of trouble. And they're both admitting to guilt in their own way. It's true. And the more and more I dig into it, because I don't have a job in this. Okay? It's not my job. I don't have a job in this. I'm not the one that's doing it, causing it. He can't turn it around on me, because it's not me, and there's no way I could do it. I could be turned around on me, because I'm not the one who's doing it. Who could even do it? Okay, so it was just his gut reaction is to blame somebody else, and the only person who was there was me. So, but 12 months of this kind of thing, 12 months, 14 to 15, somewhere around there, months of this kind of crap. And then there are the ones on the good side, the ones who have nothing to lose or nothing to gain. They are not going to profit in any way. Like the one who's in a totally different field, who more than once let me know that something's fishy. He knew not to say it direct, but he's a really nice guy. He makes me think of somebody who lived in my neighborhood growing up. He's my age group, and he made me think of somebody who lived like a guy lived in a road perpendicular to ours, just across the way, kind of thing. And it could actually be. Seriously. He seemed so familiar when I met him. This is Texas. It was in Texas. I was born and raised in Texas, and I believe so was he. But anyway, and he has that kind of feel to it. People there just don't lie just to lie, to get. I mean, you would think most people, if they had a lot to lose, wouldn't just do it that easly. But we all know that people who are pathological, or there are so many different ways people call liars. At one point I was like, how do you know the difference? And there is a difference between some of them, but just liars, and I would just prefer to just call them liars. Some of them, they've lied so much they believe in their own lies. They believe those are truisms. But I think it's truisms. Could be wrong. It's been a long time. You know, some words you don't use or lose. And but it's time that I sum that up in my head that way. Seriously. And really, last year, you know, I was so fed up with it. I wanted just to get out of it, and it's not something I can easily just walk away from. You know, like I said, I've made all these videos, and if you know what I'm making videos on, you know what I'm talking about. And it is what it is. I didn't want to mention that in this video, but really, you know, it's so pathetic, and I have a hard time. I'm trying to retrain myself again to realize, you know, that, you know, I don't diagnose anybody or anything, and nobody really should unless they're that person's, whatever it is, wherever you live, you know, that is a professional, that is licensed by the state, is whatever it is that's legal. And, but in my head, I don't go around telling other people, you know, pointing out this person's name and saying that person is this, that, and the other. But with these, you know, it just makes me think of cluster B personality disorders, especially ones when they throw conniption fits because they're not getting their way. You know, when somebody finds out, you know, my experience, I am that type of person. People think that I'm going to be easily pushed over, you know, pushover. And when they find out that I'm not, oh man, the anger that comes out of them, you know, because they were wrong, one thing, wrong. And some of these, they don't want to be told they're wrong, or even in their own mind have to admit that they were wrong. You know, they want to lash out, you know. And, yeah, it was exhausting. But anyway, I'm exhausted just talking about it, and I don't want to talk about it anymore, but I like to move on, but I use these for venting. But anyway, you know, the whole thing of where I had a train of thought that I did not finish. I jumped to another one. Stream of consciousness going here. But, no. It was such a feeling of having dealt, you know, like I was saying, you know, I have a hard time really thinking, even though I know this. I've done videos on things like narcissism. I don't pile everything under narcissism like a lot of people do. You know, I think it's because it's the buzzword. You know, for some don't know that there's a difference because they didn't go to school. They didn't learn that. They just want to use it. But, and so many different things. But not everything should be piled under narcissism. Or the narcissist. You know, like that. It's very dramatic. But anyway, I have a trouble with those with cluster B personality disorders, of just seeing them as what it is and that they're not going to change. I know that they are probably not. I've never known anybody, I'm going to put it this way, I cannot say 100% that they will never change, because nobody can say that, and it could, we don't know. Okay? Nobody can really say it with 100% certainty that they will never change. But there's a good likelihood they can alter, that it could be that they can alter something, you know, about their personality, but they're not going to change. The leopard doesn't change its spots. The scorpion will still sting, even if it means their life, because they are who they are. You know, the scorpion and the, I've heard both frog and turtle, but I think it's the scorpion and the frog. You know, it's a story. You can look it up if you want to. And, but they're not going to really change. It's just going to be hidden or something. And then, like, since a really bad situation comes up in their life, and they might actually go right back to it quickly. Boom, there they are. Like borderline personality or borderline rage. You know, Tasmanian devil style. Fit of rage. And they just, some of them just don't have the ability to stop themselves, you know. Anyway, I have a hard time, even though I know it, there's a good chance, and I've never seen one, I still have a hard time thinking these people will never be anywhere near normal. And there is a norm. I've said this before. Deviate many times. Deviate too far from the norm, and you might wind up in a psych ward. Okay, and you don't want to wind up in a psych ward. But I've never been to one, so I've never visited anybody in one. But I had a friend. He worked for a psych hospital, and I just got from him. I kind of got the heebie-jeebies, you know. But that's not all of them, of course. You know, you have, like you have movies like about Nurse Ratched or something. You think they're all that? No, not all of them are like that. I've never seen that. I think I saw the first one. Isn't there two? But anyway, it was many years ago. Anyway, I just have a hard time just making myself realize these people and stay there. You know, like I say, not diagnosing, but just in my mind, and sticking to it to think these people are not going to change. It's going to be day in, day out. Anytime you're around them, whether it's like somebody at work, somebody in your family, somebody that you're a significant other, or significant others, your children possibly even, you know, and even when they're adults, children, you know, whatever age, people at your church, people at your whatever, your social group, and that you see or you hear from or you see online, whatever it is, your group online, to know that they're never going to change. Good likelihood they will never change, and it's going to be the same thing. Lather, rinse, repeat. Okay? For the rest of your time with them. You don't always have to stay with people like that. You don't always have to have them in your life, unless you do. And there are circumstances when you do. If you're in a really bad position, you need your job, and like I said, this one woman and all this, she seems like she needs her job, and so she has to be that way. And it just looks like it's worn on her. You know, yeah. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because I think my phone's getting hot. I'll talk to you on another video.